You are Locked On Nationals, your daily Washington Nationals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello everybody, Josh Neighbors here, Locked On Nationals podcast. Today it is February 28th, 2022, and on today's show, we'll discuss the deadline day that is upon us, the date that Major League Baseball is set to get a deal done with the Major League Baseball Players Association, and if they did not, they said that Major League Baseball will cancel some of their beginning regular season games on opening day and whatnot, so we'll see what happens there. I've got some thoughts on what's happening right now, and then we're going to start attacking the 10 biggest questions facing the Washington Nationals this coming season. So exciting to kind of get into that stuff. The deal is going to get done eventually, so baseball is going to happen soon. And when it does, we'll be prepared by attacking these questions. All right, everybody, let's get into it. First of all, no video this week, or at least be pretty short on video, because I am on vacation with the family right now, and due to that, the Wi-Fi where I am is not very good, so just the audio version, but I will post these all to YouTube. Second thing, coming up tomorrow, I'm going to record with Lindsey Crosby, who is the host of Locked On Prospects. He also has a really good understanding of the finances surrounding the MLB lockout and what's happening right now between both sides. And so if you're like me, I'm a huge baseball fan, but not exactly the most privy to a lot of the individual negotiations that are taking place and really what they entail. So because of that, speaking to Lindsey is going to give us the opportunity to really dive in. It's actually going to be posted across the network for whatever host of the other shows wants to take it and use it. And so we kind of almost like a PSA, a question and answer with Lindsey about what the two groups are haggling over. That's going to be coming tomorrow. And if they get a deal done, we're still going to do an episode kind of saying, all right, where did they land on certain topics? And so I'm really looking forward to that and learning a lot myself. And so regardless of what happens, Lindsey and I will have an episode where the two of us come together and discuss these things. Let's get into the actual lockout, because I saw that, there was a story yesterday saying there was some optimism about a deal maybe getting done today. It looked like that was a source from an owner saying that. And I know that there was an article today, I believe, posted by Jeff Passan over at ESPN, where basically said, this was perpetrated by the owners and now it's boiling over and now they are to blame. And look, to me, there is a lot of truth there, but I'm not in this. There are so many people on Twitter that are in this camp of the owners, horrible people, awful people. A lot of them, they suck, they're horrible, it's their fault. And my issue is not necessarily their positions. I am very much pro player. I hope the players do get a lot of their ways. My issue was the timeline. My issue was not understanding, you don't have to be at this deadline. You can be really far apart from a deal. And if they had taken more time during, yes, the holiday season is difficult, but during December, during January, and not kind of just been so stubborn that, it would have been difficult. Now, everybody always says, we're sitting here, we're ready to go, we're ready to get these negotiations underway. But I know most of the time, deals don't come till very late on, and games are missed, and hands have to be forced. But we're at the point now where we had a shortened season in 2020, got a full one back in 2021 with not full fans the entire time. And now we're missing, spring training games, and it's going to be late spring training. And we're, potentially looking at the opening day being canceled at this point too. This is where the deals need to come in. And once again, this could have been worked on beforehand. It's like they actually have to feel the impacts. It's like, if I told you I'm going to poke you with a thumbtack in 10 seconds, unless you give me $5, then, you're not going to wait until I'm beginning to poke you with the thumbtack to give me the $5, right? You're just going to, okay, I'm going to give you the $5. I don't want him to repeatedly poke me with the thumbtack. You don't wait until you begin to feel the effects, or I'm an inch away from your skin to actually do it, because you know what's going to come. You know I'm going to poke you. Well, Like, you had 10 seconds. They had months. They had months to get to the table. And it's like, I guess we got to feel the impacts. I guess we got to feel the heat. We got to feel the public heat. We got to feel the heat in the players and on our wallets. Like, you didn't have to wait to this point, and they did. Now, to the owner's side about what they want. Once again, not an expert on a lot of these things, but I will say this. If you've ever watched Shark Tank, notice how frugal guys like Mark Cuban, all of them are, right? Shark Tank's a very popular show. They fight and scratch and claw for small percentages or, large percentages, but percentages of these companies and dollar amounts to them that are semi-consequential. Think about all the wealth a guy like Mark Cuban has accumulated in other parts of his life. He owns a NBA team, owns, obviously a bunch of businesses. He's getting I promise you, a lot of money from being on the show Shark Tank. So when he buys somebody's company, a certain percentage for $500,000, if he were to lose all that money, would it suck? Yes. Would it be crippling? No. But that being said, those guys fight, scratch, and claw, guys and girls, I should say, fight, scratch, and claw for every dime, every nickel, every penny when they're in those negotiations with people. And the reason why they do that is because that's what's made them so successful. Being shrewd, knowing when having your hard line, using your ability, using your power financially to get deals done to continue your own success. And I think we have to understand that not all owners are like that, but many ownerships are like that. And so giving ground is not always how they maximize profits. And, I think that's the problem that we see. It's like a lot of them want to maximize profits. They're not. Steve Cohen actually, is a good example of somebody who's like, we're not here for this guy wants to spend as much money as he possibly can. We're here for the love of the game. We're out here tweeting. We want the Mets to win baseball games. That's kind of where they are, right? Like, the Lerners are not like that. They got a world championship, and so they're going to flirt with the idea maybe of letting Juan Soto walk because in their minds, they've been to the pinnacle, right? They're not going to re-sign everybody. They're not going to go for broke this year, or make a bunch of trades, spend a lot of money all the time because that's not how they operate. This is a business to them. This is not a team like the Mets where they're just buying it to have fun or, a cash cow like the Yankees are. They're in a unique situation, so being frugal for them matters. Now, they are in some parts, you talk about like the minor leaguers pay and things like that. Like you're haggling over small amounts of money that improve the quality of life of people that you really eventually hope to be in your system, to be on your team. Yeah, that stuff is stuff that they have to improve. The arbitration, things like that, when guys are eligible, right? Teams sometimes won't bring players up at certain times because they don't want to pay them a certain amount of money sooner or be put in a position they've got to pay somebody sooner. That kind of stuff has to stop. If you want somebody on your team, pay them the fair amount, pay them when you should pay them. That's kind of another conversation piece that to me, like in my opinion, I'm with the players on this. When you think about the players' side on a lot of these issues, I know they got the big guns at the table, Max and Garrett, and I think as Andrew Miller also is there as well. I've heard the idea. It's like, well, why are these, the richest guys there? It's like, look, those guys are setting precedents. Guys like Max Scherzer with his $40 plus million a year contract with the New York Mets is setting a precedent. I know he's going to reap the rewards of that contract, but he's also helping guys in the future. Future players will benefit. Even Juan Soto soon might benefit from that massive contract. Older players, he's showing the amounts of money that older guys can get. People will benefit from guys like that, and those guys have a mandate, almost in my opinion, to hold strong to get what they need because it's not about the guys right now. In some senses it is, but it's about the guys down the road. They have an opportunity right here. The owners have never looked worse publicly. This is where you say, look, we want to make the game better. We're here to make the game better for players, minor, major, whatever league, from wherever. We're here to make the game better for them. We're here to give more opportunities. We're here to get more money for these guys. You are owners. You are few. We are the many. And the fans want to see us. Let them see us. Let them let us get paid what we deserve because the fans love us. And then they've got a responsibility to the next generation of guys. This contract's going to be around. We'll see how long the length of the CBA goes, but it's going to be around for a minute. So they've got a responsibility to make life better for Major League Baseball players now and in the future and set precedents, not just with their contracts, but with this CBA that can help even future players down the line. They've got a responsibility to do that. You could say, well, the owners, they have a responsibility to do that too. Yeah, but they're all going to still end up being pretty rich, right? They're all going to end up being very, very rich. Baseball players, the same could not be said for them. So, go back to the original point. We've hit deadline day. Sucks that we got this far, but let's be hopeful that something can get done. And something will get done soon. It's got to. Once again, there's too much skin in the game for too many of the stakeholders involved. They're going to get something done. It's just a matter of when. So we got to have a little bit more patience. I acknowledge it should not have come to this point. We as baseball fans can all acknowledge it should not have come to this point. But the first negotiations of the day are set to end here in about a little bit over half an hour away, I would say, until the first negotiations are set to end. So we'll see if we can get anything, and obviously, if something does happen, we'll have more on that when it does. All right, quick break in the action today. Let you guys know today's show is brought to you by our friends at BetOnline and BetOnline.net. BetOnline has the most extensive collection of odds, news, scores, props, all of those things. You can bet on the UFC. You can bet on boxing. You can bet on college hoops. You can bet on the NBA. You can bet on the NHL. There's probably some MLB futures available there as well. I know spring training's not quite done yet, and I can't wait to see the flurry of signings once the MLB lockout is over, and so I'm sure that'll shape the odds as each signing occurs, which will be fun to watch. But you can bet on all of these things at BetOnline and BetOnline.net. Go there today. New, sleek interface. Check it out. Once again, BetOnline and BetOnline.net. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. All right, so I have compiled a list of my 10 biggest questions as we head into the 2022 MLB season, however long it is, however many games that we're going to see. So I've compiled my 10 for the Nationals and go through a couple of them today. So my first one is number 10. Can the vets produce at a consistent rate? And so you might say, Josh, who are the vets we're talking about when we consider the Washington Nationals? Well, I've zeroed in on two. Obviously, the Nationals want Josh Bell to produce. But the two guys I'm really looking at here are Cesar Hernadez and Alcides Escobar. Both the guys are on contracts that are 1 year long. So opportunities are here for both of them. Alcides is at the point of his career where really for him, this is about staying in Major League Baseball. He's 35 years old. He's been in the league for a long time, right? His first year was 2008 with Milwaukee. Didn't make too many appearances. It's the first time he showed up. Now we're in 2021. And so this was a guy that was not there, and we didn't see him in 2019. We didn't see him in the majors in 2020. We saw him in 2021. And so, and hit 288 with a 340 on base percentage, 105 OPS plus, and so, he had a 28 RBI on the year, and this was a guy that was pretty productive for the Nationals, and kind of a guy they didn't expect to be pretty productive. They just picked up. Well, he's going to have a chance again. It looks like shortstop is going to be his to start off with. None of the guys the Nationals have at this point in time are set to kind of supplant him at short. And so a couple questions here. Number one, can he be a productive player, right? Can he be the 2021 version of himself? Can he continue to do that? And given that's something steady, and also if he does that, if he does produce that way, can he be somebody at the deadline the Nationals flip for somebody else? And the reason why I said is, well, they probably wouldn't get somebody that good for him. Sure, it's fair. But at the same time, think about it this way. He'd be a rental, sure, yes, and not a guy who provides a lot of pop, and a guy who doesn't walk a ton, but still 340 on base, pretty respectable. 288 batting average, still pretty respectable. 105 OPS plus, pretty respectable in the amount of 75 games, 349 plate appearances. So this is a guy that if he can kind of recreate that first half here, once they get to the deadline, flip him. And think about this: the Nationals last year flipped John Lester for Elaine Thomas, right? They flipped. I'm trying to think about Riley Adams, right, for the Brad Hand trade, and Brad Hand wasn't performing too well. So you've got some opportunities here to flip these guys. And if you do flip them, when you do flip them, or at least just Alcides' case right here, if you're able to flip him, not maybe not a top of the line guy, but somebody who could eventually help you out and be some kind of productive player. Maybe it's a bullpen arm, right? The Nationals need more of those. I think Alcides could net somebody like that just because of his age and his productivity. And if he's able to repeat that, a quick rental that gets you a little something back in return. And all the while, in the meantime, if you don't get that, trade or he doesn't produce that well, you're still on the hook for 1 year. And also, he can provide veteran leadership. Once again, guy was a leadoff hitter for a world championship team. So he has value that a 1 year contract can bring to the franchise. I know some people moaned and groaned when they saw that Alcides Escobar was coming back. But if you think about where the Nationals are, the current spot they're in right now, a guy like this is going to have value, even if he's not that good. You're not paying him that much. And on a team that's short on veteran experience, he adds a world championship flavor that Nationals have lost, as many of their former world championship guys have gone on, right? No catchers anymore. Ryan Zimmerman is gone. Anthony Rendon is gone. The list goes on and on for the number of guys that were part of the world championship team. It's Soto and Robles. Those two guys are still around. Kieboom was around, but didn't really, that wasn't really a big part of the team. And obviously some of the pitching staff, those guys who were in the back end as well, they're gone. So guys in the field providing a Trey, as I obviously mentioned, Trey Turner is gone as well, no Adam Eaton. So a lot of the world championship flavor that they had is gone. This is somebody that won a world championship, not obviously in D.C., did it in Kansas City, but knows what it's like to win and can impart a lot of wisdom upon young guys. So let's hope he can do that this season. All right, I'm going to talk about Cesar Hernadez in 1 second, but first, one more word from our sponsors. Today's show is brought to you by Built Bar. You guys can go to Built.com today. That's Built.com, and check out the extensive line of Built Bars that they've got right now. Flavors like mint brownie, coconut almond, and new this month, white chocolate cookies and cream. They're delicious. All new flavors will be coming out all the time, so go check it out once again at Built.com. Most Built Bars have 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of sugar. Much better than a candy bar, which usually has 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. So if you guys go to Built.com, that's Built.com, and use the promo code LOCKED15, LOCKED15, LOCK15, you'll get 15% off your first order at Built.com today. Today's show is also brought to you by RockAuto.com. With ever-increasing numbers of makes and models of cars, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure the often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning, is your Odyssey an LX or an EX, and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing the only brand their warehouse happens to carry? You have computers with access to RockAuto.com at your home and in your pocket. Why choose to spend 30, 50, or even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or a car dealership? For example, a Honda Odyssey fuel pump is $353. From a chain store, it's only $216 at RockAuto.com. So go to RockAuto.com right now. See all the parts available for your car or truck. Right, Locked On in their How'd You Hear About Us box. That way they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. That's RockAuto.com. All right, so the other guy I mentioned about these vets, and they're middle infield vets is what they are, is Cesar Hernandez. The Nationals signed him to a 1 year contract. Now, this is somebody in Hernandez who is 32 years old. So he's not really at the tail end like Alcides is. I mean, that's, excuse me, that's a full 3 years. And you might think, 3 years, not that big of a gap. But in your playing prime, there is a big difference between 32 and 35. You're just, you're starting to slowly but surely physically decline just a bit. I mean, you're pro athletes, so these years do matter. And his quality of play has not been the highest. It was not great last year. I thought his 2020 was solid. He had 283 with a 355 on base at a 109 OPS plus. And that was a year where he drove in the shortened season. He ended up driving in, 20 runs in that shortened season. And the year before, he had the high of 71 for his career. It's a number he has not eclipsed. So that was in Philadelphia. a guy who's had some recent good play, but last year for him with the Cleveland Indians and the then Indians, now the Guardians, and the Chicago White Sox, it was a total, he hit 232 with a 308 on base. So obviously, he's in a good job walking a bit there. And his OPS plus was down to 89. So, still had a good year where he drove in 62 runs, relative production happening there. He drove in a total of 21 home runs last year. So that was his highest clip of his entire career. So there are some signs that things are good there. The big question I think everybody's got is when it comes to Hernandez, how much are we going to see Hernandez starting? How much are we going to see Luis Garcia starting? We're going to talk about Carter Kieboom in a later show, but the one interesting thing about Carter Kieboom when you compare him to a guy like Luis Garcia is that Luis Garcia is still just 22 years old, 21 years old actually, excuse me. He turns 22 in May. So, while there's pressure to get guys in the major leagues a bit faster, Garcia, had a really nice 40-game stretch back in 2020. Then last year dropped off a bit in the 70 games he played in. He hit 242, the 275 on base, and then an OPS plus of 86. So, this is not somebody who's walking a whole lot. His play discipline isn't quite there yet, but just, he's 21 years old. Not everybody is Juan Soto, right? So he has got a bit more of a, he's got a bit more of a clock that's a bit longer as opposed to a Kieboom, where you're saying, all right, you've had a couple chances in the majors. This is going to be your first full chance. Third base is, well, knock on wood for Nationals fans, third base is going to be yours. But Carter Kieboom, is going to be 24 years old. And we've seen, him play at this point in time. He's getting up towards 100 games. He's over 100 games right now. So it's not a massive sample size, but still, I think at some point Nats fans have wanted him to break out just a little bit. Once again, sample size still pretty small, nowhere near a full season. But at 24 years old, if the Nationals want to start building a contender, they got to ask more out of him. At 22 years old for Luis Garcia and seem to be thrust before he's completely physically mature and all those kinds of things, you can be a bit more patient with that. Now, he's going to start off in the major league roster. I think if you're going to do that, you should start him every single day. Hernandez can, play some second base, maybe even play some third if they need him to go in that direction too, depending on how he's hitting. Maybe have him DH one day. We'll see how that goes. But for him, I think when we had the same conversation about Alcides Escobar, we talked about somebody that could have a good year and they could trade. Hernandez definitely fits that bill. I actually think he fits that description a bit better than Alcides Escobar does. So that you have to balance that, but to get him to that point where he's tradable and having a good season, he's going to have to play a lot. So how the Nationals manage that situation to me is going to be very, very interesting. If they can get one of those two guys to produce at a high level and to, they're both going to bring some veteran leadership. They both, have 10 plus years in the league. I think Cesar Hernandez, the first year in the league is 2013. So now 2022 is technically his 10th season in the bigs. And that's 10, a decade of major league, of being a major league player, valuable experience that he can impart on other players. So you're going to get that value right off the top. That you're going to get that value right off the top of just that experience. Then can you bring that high level of play that we've seen him have at certain times, or a decent level of play that makes him a desirable commodity for other teams, would still give up some kind of prospect to the Nationals. Who knows? And they're not all going to hit, but, Riley Adams and Lane Thomas look good, and we'll see if those guys are any good. But change of scenery, finding players like that can always be something that's helpful. And maybe if you can get Cesar Hernandez to a position where he's that good, you can get somebody else. But how they manage that to that point, and if it gets to that point, is very interesting, because the one thing the Nationals until 2020 didn't do in the shortened season, I don't think they gave enough opportunities to especially Carter Kieboom. I thought they really kind of bungled that situation where it was his job at first, then it wasn't his job, and so at Luis Garcia, how does he get that treatment? Because that was 2 years ago. So I guess Garcia now is the same age that was the same age that Carter Kieboom was at that point, and we were all calling for them to play Kieboom more, just to make sure he was starting to see what he got. So maybe you want to keep going with Garcia. Once again, second, his numbers were horrible last year. Hitting 242 is not like hitting 208, 275 on base percentage, right? Carter Kieboom's numbers, it was a 202 back in 2020, a 207 back in 2021. And that was with 33 games played and 62 games played. So just not a level of play. A bit more up and down for Luis Garcia, who's played 110 games. So, you're trying to find that. And I think it's a situation where I'd like to see him play every single day. I don't think they're going to put him in AAA. So I think he should be the everyday guy at second base. How does that factor in with Cesar Hernadez? That's going to be an interesting thing because we've seen Davey favor the vets sometimes over playing young guys. I hope that doesn't happen here. All right, that'll do it for today's show. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at @LO_Nationals. You can follow me personally on Twitter at @JoshNeighbors_. You can find the show on both YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Till next time, my friends, as always, stay safe, and let's hope that we have an agreement between the players and the Players Association.